Welcome back to the Dispute.a podcast. I'm Paul. This is episode 11, and it opens a new run of episodes. The first 10 mapped the pre-legal space. These next 5 are for the buyer who is already inside the machinery, behind on payments, holding a penalty letter, facing a developer who wants a number. Let's start with the situation directly, because if you're listening to this episode, you're probably in it. You've fallen behind on an off-plan payment schedule. The developer has written to you. The letter contains a figure, the installments owed plus penalties, and the question in your head is the right question. Is that figure real? The number on the letter is a position, not a verdict. Here is the first thing to understand. The figure in a developer's demand letter is the developer's opening position. It is not a court ruling. It is not an audited account. It is what the developer's contracts team has calculated on the developer's reading of the contract, applied in the way most favorable to the developer. Sometimes that figure is exactly right. Developers' teams are professional, and the contract often does support what they're claiming. But often enough to matter, the figure is soft in places. Penalties, calculated on a basis the contract doesn't quite provide. Charges stacked that the clauses don't stack. Interest applied from a date the notice provisions don't support. Amounts that assume the developer's own performance was perfect when it wasn't. You cannot tell which kind of letter you're holding by looking at it. The letter always looks official. The question is only answered one way, by reading the figure against the contract, the payment record, and the statement of account, line by line. This is a version of something that runs through this whole subject. A large share of these disputes are, underneath, misunderstandings of position, one party, sometimes both, not knowing what the contract actually provides, and a dispute that's really an information problem calls for an information response before it calls for a legal one. The facts change when the documents arrive, something we see constantly, and it's worth saying plainly. What a buyer describes on a phone call and what the documents show are routinely different, not because buyers lie, because buyers remember the story, the conversations, the reassurances, the sequence as they experienced it, the statement of account, the notices, the signed schedule tell the record. And as we covered in episode 9, disputes are decided on the record. Sometimes the record is worse than the story. The buyer thought they'd missed 1 installment and the ledger shows 3. Sometimes the record is better. The penalty the developer is claiming turns out to rest on a clause that doesn't say what the letter assumes. Either way, position is established on documents, not descriptions. Nothing serious should be decided, no payment made, no fight picked, no lawyer retained, until the actual figure the contract supports has been established from the actual record. The arithmetic of fighting a demand. Now the part most buyers have never fully priced. Suppose you dispute the figure and it goes to litigation. What are the branches? If you win, you've spent your legal fees and a year or more to establish a lower figure. If the reduction exceeds the cost, that trade can be worth it. If you lose, look carefully at what you now owe. The original demand, which was always the floor of this branch, not the ceiling. Your own legal and expert fees across the life of the case. And exposure to a costs award, a contribution toward the developer's legal costs, which against the largest developers, running premium counsel, can reach as much as 50,000 dirhams, depending on how far the matter runs and the appetite to appeal. And notice the asymmetry underneath. The developer's litigation machine is already paid for. Their lawyers are on retainer, handling many matters. Yours isn't. See you in court is a cheap sentence for them and an expensive one for you. So for a buyer who genuinely owes something, and most buyers in this situation owe something, litigation is mostly a machine for making the number go up. Structured negotiation, built on an accurate read of what's actually owed, is the only branch where the number goes down. How the work is structured. For clarity on how this work runs in practice, it starts with a free call, where some people are told in 10 minutes there's nothing worth engaging on. If there may be, a fixed fee assessment establishes the position from the documents, and if the case is real, Dispute.a runs the negotiation under engagement terms that tie its fee to a documented reduction against the developer's demand, half. The fee is refunded if the number doesn't move. The details are on the site. What to take from this episode. The figure in the demand letter is the developer's opening position, calculated in the developer's favor. It is not a verdict. Position is established on documents, the contract, the ledger, the notices, not on the story either party remembers. The facts routinely change when the documents arrive. Fighting a demand you'll partly lose means paying the demand, your fees, and possibly a share of theirs. The demand is the floor of the fighting branch, not the ceiling. Structured negotiation on an accurately read position is the only branch where the number goes down. In the next episode, the default notice, because once one has been served, a clock is running, and the days that follow are the highest leverage days in the whole dispute. Thanks for listening. The full transcript is at transcript.a. For pre-legal dispute support, dispute.a is where that work is done.